Europe remembers many leaders, but only a few become legends. And among those rare names, one stands out with a quiet power that reshaped an entire continent. Elena Varga, the woman whose courage, intelligence, and unshakable humanity changed the direction of a crisis that could have torn Europe apart. Her name wasn't born in palaces or political headquarters. It rose from ashes, conflict, and a childhood marked by a promise she made to herself. A promise that one day, she would stop the suffering she once witnessed. 1. The child who saw what others ignored. Elena was born in a small border town in Hungary. A place where history never slept and fear often traveled faster than hope. The town lay between two countries that had a long history of disagreements. Soldiers were common. Sirens were normal, and conflict was a silent neighbor everyone tolerated. When she was 9, Elena witnessed something she would never forget. It was a freezing December evening. Snow covered every roof, every tree branch. The wind cut through clothes like knives. And then, she saw a long line of refugees walking through the snow, men, women, and children, carrying whatever life had left them. Among them was a girl Elena's age, wearing torn shoes and holding onto her mother's hand for strength. Her eyes were full of fear, exhaustion, and confusion. Elena took off her own scarf and gave it to the girl. The child smiled weakly, a smile that contained both gratitude and pain. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Her mother found her awake, staring at the window. "What troubles you, my child?" she asked. Elena whispered, "If nobody stops this suffering, then I will." The seed of destiny was planted. 2. The girl who studied more than books growing up. Elena wasn't like other children. She didn't just study math, languages, or history. She studied people. Their expressions, their fears, their hopes, their stories. She had a sensitivity that felt like a gift and a burden. While other teenagers talked about fashion or parties, she spent hours reading about diplomacy, peace treaties, international law, migrations, European conflicts. But the real education came from living on the border. There she learned something no textbook could teach. Europe isn't just a map. Europe is a mirror, reflecting both beauty and brokenness. By 16, she understood that real change required more than sympathy. It required strategy, courage, and heart. Her teachers often said, "Her eyes see the world differently. She is thinking about solutions when the rest of us are thinking about survival." They were right. 3. When Europe burned, her destiny ignited. At 27, when most people are discovering who they are, Elena discovered what she was meant to do. Europe was facing one of its worst humanitarian crises. Borders were closing, thousands were stranded, food supply chains were collapsing, and a small conflict between three countries was threatening to explode into a continental disaster. Fear was rising. Misinformation was spreading. Leaders were blaming each other. And ordinary people were the ones paying the price. But Elena didn't wait for someone to ask her for help. She moved toward the fire, not away from it. She traveled across 3 countries, meeting refugees, border guards, doctors, mayors, teachers, journalists, and local leaders. She listened to every voice, every story, every concern. Her mind worked like a map. Her heart worked like a shield. She started organizing humanitarian teams, building communication channels, and gathering data on what people needed most. Refugee camps that were collapsing found sudden structure. Miscommunication between governments reduced. Volunteers started flowing in. Rumors began spreading. Who is this young woman bringing order to chaos? Why are officials listening to her? How does she move with such confidence? The journalists eventually found her. They gave her a name, the voice Europe could not ignore. 4. The night she faced Europe's most powerful leaders, one winter night, Brussels called for an emergency summit. The crisis was spiraling out of control. Leaders were frustrated, panicked, and running out of solutions. As people debated who should speak, one advisor suggested Elena. "She's done more in 2 months than many governments have done in 5 years," he said. And for the first time in history, a 27-year-old woman with no political title was invited to address a room filled with presidents, generals, prime ministers, and top advisors. When she walked into the hall, whispers filled the air. As she even experienced, "Will she waste our time? Why her, of all people?" But when Elena began to speak, the room fell into a silence that only truth can create. She said, "Europe is losing not because we lack power, but because we have forgotten people. A border is not a wall. A border is a responsibility. She presented a peace blueprint, shared humanitarian corridors, a joint border protection and relief unit, crisis communication between nations, a law protecting refugee children, a youth diplomacy council for unbiased solutions. Her speech lasted 18 minutes. Her impact lasted forever. By midnight, 3 countries signed an agreement based on her plan. Europe witnessed something unbelievable. A young woman, unarmed, unappointed, and underestimated, brought peace where politics had failed. 5. The media declared, she saved thousands. In 6 months, migration routes stabilized, supply chains reopened, child shelters were built, conflict zones cooled down, tension between 3 nations dropped by 80%. Elena became a symbol of hope. Not because she sought attention, but because she delivered results. Her message was simple. People are not problems. People are the reason we solve problems. Europe's newspapers wrote, she didn't stop a war. She stopped the reasons for war. 6. The opposition tried to break her. With success also came resistance. Some political groups feared her influence. How can an ordinary woman shape decisions at this level? She is changing narratives. This is dangerous. She cannot be allowed to become the people's voice. They attempted to discredit her. They questioned her qualifications. They twisted her words. But Elena remained unshaken. She answered only once. If telling the truth shakes a system, then the system must change, not the truth. Her bravery won more hearts. Young people began following her work. Universities invited her to speak, and Europe slowly began shifting toward a more humane direction. But her greatest test was still ahead. 7. The night the continent stood on the edge again, one evening, a border clash erupted between 2 nations. The media warned that this could be the spark of a regional war. Tanks were moving. Soldiers were preparing. Fear was rising faster than logic. Elena didn't wait. She went straight to the conflict zone. Not as a leader, not as a soldier, but as a human shield. Her team begged her not to go, but she said, peace cannot be negotiated from safety. It must be negotiated from courage. She crossed the border, stepped into the tension, and called the commanders of both armies to meet her. Face to face. They agreed only because they knew who she was. Her reputation had become stronger than their distrust. Under freezing night skies, surrounded by soldiers, weapons and uncertainty, she spoke. If you fire tonight, you are not harming each other. You are harming Europe. And Europe is our shared home. Her sincerity broke down barriers that weapons never could. By dawn, both countries signed an immediate ceasefire. History named it the Midnight Miracle Treaty. And on that treaty, her name appeared first. 8. She became the spirit of a new Europe. After the treaty, Europe's view of Elena changed forever. She wasn't just a negotiator. She wasn't just a humanitarian. She wasn't just a strategist. She became a symbol. A symbol of courage, unity, compassion, resilience, and hope. People said, she did not rise to power, she rose to purpose. Her influence shaped new education programs, new humanitarian laws, new refugee policies, and a new generation of young diplomats across Europe. Her message echoed in every capital city. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of responsible leaders. 9. The legacy that will never fade. Elena Varga's work prevented a war, protected thousands, and redefined Europe's humanitarian conscience. She showed the world that empathy is stronger than ego, intelligence is stronger than intimidation, and one determined individual can move nations toward peace. Her story inspires millions because she wasn't born powerful. She became powerful by choosing to care when others chose to look away. Her life proves a timeless truth: heroes are not created by titles. Heroes are created by choices, and Europe will never forget her choices. Final message of the story: the world changes when ordinary people decide to do extraordinary things. This is the legacy Elena Varga left behind. A legacy written not in textbooks, but in lives saved and nations united.